critical focus channel.
Time to go big or go home. Hrothgorn crashes into Spitewood and Embergard with a luggage full of traps and a plethora of vicious little nobblars and a big saber-toothed cat in tow. Hrothgorn's old version were quite bonkers in certain ways, not least the fact that he could hit for 2 damage from range baseline. Remember, you could buff ranged damage at least 2 times back then by a Glory Seeker and Fighter's Ferocity, and then sometimes from other sources as well. And add to that his ability to push the target 2 hexes towards him after a successful ranged attack, often into the trap model. In addition, his was the only deck with above 6 searches. He actually had 8 of 12 cards being searches in his rival deck. Anyhow, let's leave the first edition nostalgia and see how they fare now. War Scroll first. They all inspire when an enemy fighter is slain by a melee attack made by your leader. This is both sort of a buff and a nerf. Previously it had to happen adjacent, so that's better now, but on the other hand it didn't need to come from his melee attack, which made killing him with anyone else, power cards, the trap, or his ranged attack all valid options. I don't really like the thematic loss here. Why does it make sense lore-wise that it has to be melee? He is a trapper and the trap model is really central to the warband. Why can't at least the trap model killing someone inspire your team? I think they missed the mark here a bit. Still, the fact that his melee attack is very good and they all inspire at once is sort of a saving grace. Everwinter Ambush next is a mechanic that lets you deploy Thrafnir, the big cat, in an empty hex in enemy territory that is not a starting hex or contains a feature token. It is not always gonna be desirable to do so, of course, but to have that option is very nice and sort of can play tricks on your opponent's mind. The fact that the Waystone hexes aren't feature tokens is pretty sweet here, so even if he is sort of boldly deployed yonder like this, you have that defensive reroll if they get to go first and want to get rid of him ASAP. If you do go first, you might have set up support come your first attack. As I said, it's not always going to be a favorable option, mainly versus big brutes that have 1 or 2 fights that can swing for 3 damage off the bat, but versus hordes, etc., it's less of an issue. Ravenous Traps means that at the start of the first action step in the first round, you do place a friendly trap model in an empty hex in friendly territory. So this can even be a feature token to shut down the Aqua Gyranis glory from your opponent perhaps, or make them having a bit of a harder time to score holding objectives of your side, which is a feature in many decks. So yeah, very, very good. If a fighter, any fighter, is placed in, pushed into, or enters a hex containing a friendly trap model, inflict 2 damage on that fighter and then remove the trap model from the battlefield. So every fighter can get whacked by the trap, while previously Bushwhacker was immune to at least friendly trap models, but that in and of itself isn't really a big issue. A, he's just not a very good fighter, and B, he is not sort of tied to the mechanic of the trap anymore, at least not more than any other nobbler, which is both good but also a bit sad from a sort of lore perspective, like a lot else in this edition. The good thing is you don't need to place it next to Bushwhacker though, which makes its placement far less restrictive, and also the trap isn't sitting duck as soon as Bushwhacker turns to mincemeat. But let's reevaluate it more after we have read the rest of the War Scroll, since the trap model is such a central feature to the entire War Scroll. And the fact that this happens after the rest of the deployment is done and dusted makes it even more juicy, given you know the full lay of the land when you deploy it. More traps means that in your power step, if there are no friendly trap models on the battlefield, you place a friendly trap model in an empty hex adjacent to a friendly nobblar. And we do have 3 nobblars to start with. The fact it only works in your power step is sort of a bummer, but it also would have been a little too bonkers if not. But if you're sitting pretty on a push card, put the trap model next down to a fighter with 2 wounds left, as long as you have a nobblar nearby of course, and cash in on the glory when you push them into the trap model. Happy times. This is pretty great, and with 3 nobblars you're gonna keep the mechanic alive, at least sort of a good bit into the second round in most games. Also do note traps don't disappear at the end of the round, so if you need to gamble a bit, dump it in your last power step and hope to go first in the next round to do some damage up front. Risky play of course, but Live a little. A. Surprising competences search ability used immediately after a friendly Noblar moves if that fighter is adjacent to a friendly trap model. Remove the trap model from the battlefield and place it in a different hex adjacent to that Noblar. So this happens after the move if the Noblar is adjacent to the trap model. This one is pretty wild. Remember what I said about push cards. Move in your activation, place it next to an enemy and shove them into this one and shove them into this one with a push card. Do remember of course that a charge is a move as well, which just makes this even better. And this is not sort of a once per game, this can just keep happening. Very interesting war scroll. Pushes will be so helpful to maximize the effectiveness of this warband, but of course let's check out the fighter cards as well. Hrothgorn is 4 move, so quite mobile for a chunky fighter from the get-go. 1 shield, 6 health, weirdly a lot punier than Gorlock then, which doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to me. And 3 bounty, which tracks. He hits like a truck from range 1 with 2 hammers for 3 damage and range 3 for 3 swords 1 damage with grapple. His melee attack is pretty reasonable for a leader of his stature, and his ranged attacks. Grapple can for sure help the trap model out a bit, similar to his old rendition. Inspired, he picks up a second shield, which is pretty game changing on the amount of wounds he's on, and this makes him essentially on par at least with Gorlock, since that fighter stays on 1 shield. His melee attack goes to an excellent 3 hammers, 3 damage, slap a keen eye, a grievous, 4 hammers, 4 damage. Make your enemies weep blood. His range attack picks up another sword as well. Yep, he's quite solid and I don't have too much to wish for here really. The fact that he is 4 move uninspired rather than 3 makes a big difference. Lugit and Twack is 3 move, 1 dodge, 3 wounds, because they're 2 models stacked onto each other, and is a single bounty. They have the Noblar keyword and hits from range 1, 1 hammer, 1 damage. Wow, that's pretty bad. 3 health does help though, and inspired they pick up 4 move and goes from 1 hammer to 3 swords, which is quite the boost in accuracy, especially with support, and picks up stagger as well. 1 dodge stinks though, but it's probably reasonable for 2 Noblars trying to piggyback while sort of balancing a top heavy stone axe. Thrafnir is 5 move, 2 dodge, 3 health, 1 bounty, and he hits from range 1, 3 swords, 2 damage. Very solid. I wish he was 4 health at the expense of a health from one of the Noblars really. 3 health is still quite fragile, and I think it would fit a cat of his stature really. The 5 uninspired move and 2 dodge is very tasty though. The attack is perfectly reasonable. Inspired he adds cleave to his arsenal as well, not too shabby. On 3 health, it's a bit of a risky business placing him in enemy territory versus teams like Morgok or Iron Souls, etc. Still, he'll probably do some lifting for you. Bushwhacker is 3 move, 1 dodge, 2 health, 1 bounty, and hits for game-breaking 1 sword, 1 damage from range 1. Yeah, he is worse than the tapas plate of snakes and frogs for Jaws of Itzel. Poor sod. But he is a Noblar, and that keyword alone makes him into a useful idiot at least. Inspired, he turns his 3 move into 4 and goes to 2 dodge, and weirdly gains both accuracy and damage, and ensnare. He really gains confidence when you whisper nice little things to him. Such a cute little boy. That attack actually is half decent if you can set up support. The challenge here will be surviving until you do inspire though. With him being worth the same bounty as Thrafnir, it's hard to see him making it far into the battle, especially when he actually turns half decent on his attack inspired. Lastly, Quiv, who carries the huge bolt for Hrothgorn, is 3 move, 1 dodge, 2 health, 1 bounty, and it's pretty much as useless as the former, but at least hits with 2 swords instead of 1 uninspired. Not entirely sure why, but I digress. Inspired, he picks up pace and turns 1 dodge into 2, just like the whacka of bushes, and also turns 2 swords into 3, but doesn't gain the damage boost of his Noblar really. So he's not your most pivotal fighter, I guess. Yeah, let's face it, these little green boys are just there for the keyword and to hug objectives and provide support, but that's nothing to scoff at. And the Noblar keyword here is obviously no small thing, and in a sense Thrafnir might be almost more expendable given that fact. Summing things up, this looks like a lot of fun, and I like that rather than a handful of so once per game abilities. We have a solid mechanic, useful several times, stays around, which will increase the feel of actually playing a specific warband rather than a bunch of generic fighting cards with, say, 3 abilities or pretty much copy-paste of a lot of other stuff like push X fighter 1 hex, or here have cleave for 1 single attack, which we've seen on several war scrolls across the board. This is a lot more unique, and I love that the trap model here is so central. Including pushes, as I touched upon earlier, will be key here, so whatever way you go about it, do include all you can make room for in your Mantrapper sack. That is it for today. What do you think about the warband? What do you think about potential pairings? Are they looking good? Is the theme intact? What do you think about Hrothgorn's fighter card, etc.? Do let me know down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye. Lastly, a big shout out to all my members that help support my content and makes it so much easier for me to produce multiple videos on a weekly basis. Members do get access to the member Discord, get to influence the content, get early access to a ton of videos, as well as get featured in the monthly painting showcase if they want. Member or not, I dearly appreciate the like, the comment and the subscription.